was great. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, John. Next up is our opening keynote panel, Digital Selling, where both investors and leading software companies are doubling down. I'm really excited to welcome Don Addington, the CRO at Tackle. So take it away, Don.
Hey, thanks, Rebecca, and thanks everybody for joining us. Fighting through a few camera and background problems. So you guys, if you're 80s fan movie buffs, you get a little extra Easter egg in the session today from my background. So wanted to introduce our incredible guest today, two awesome women to talk with through this journey about digital selling, and wanted to introduce Mary D'Onofrio from Bessemer and Jessica Alexander from CrowdStrike. Mary, if you want to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your role there at Bessemer and what you do, and then Jessica, you can go next.
Certainly, and thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. I'm Mary D'Onofrio, a partner at Bessemer Venture Partners, which I joined 4 years ago to start our firm's growth practice. I spend almost all my time in SaaS and in cloud investing, and really pleased to be here as I think about kind of cloud go-to-market, digital selling. It's really, for me as an investor with that hat on, thinking about sales efficiency, how to help companies to use their sales and marketing dollars as efficiently as possible to catalyze ARR growth. And, as an investor, I use metrics like CAC payback and net retention to think about that. But then in my lens as a board director of many of these companies, many of which, have product-led growth motions themselves, that are trying to figure out digital selling. It's about really the effectiveness with which we can use the capital in our balance sheets and trying to figure out the sales processes that are going to help businesses to grow. So really excited to be here and to dig into this conversation.
Thanks. Jessica?
Hey, hi. Thanks, Don. Appreciate you having me today. And Mary, nice to be with you. I've been at CrowdStrike about 5.5 years and have had the honor of a lot of experience designing a cloud go-to-market strategy and leading a cloud co-selling team. So, we invested in cloud go-to-market because it offered a new path to budget and a new cloud co-sell motion to new personas, and budget that was owned by the cloud service providers. So it's been a really fun ride to get the opportunity to build out teams and mechanisms that support a cloud go-to-market.
Awesome. Well, thanks to both of you for being generous with your time and with your experience and sharing with the rest of the audience here. I think I'm super excited. Jessica, you and the team at CrowdStrike have worked with Tackle for a while and started your journey really without Tackle. And CrowdStrike, for those of you who aren't familiar, is kind of one of the darlings of the cloud marketplace game. And Jessica really helped to build out that motion. And so I thought what we'd do is take a kind of a ride today through kind of the arc of where you've been. Where you started, and then kind of what the future looks like with your cloud go-to-market, and specifically, alignment with the cloud providers and leveraging marketplace to sell. Talk about that, and then Mary's got some great color on the things that you're seeing at CrowdStrike, how important those things are, and where she's seeing them across her portfolio companies. So we'll kind of weave these two worlds together a bit as we go along, but. For the audience, Jessica, if you could maybe talk about sort of the early days of marketplace at CrowdStrike, and I think almost like I won't call it an accidental entry into marketplace. I call it a very strategic entry into marketplace, and I think you've got a great backstory there. Specifically, like as you talk about getting that off the ground, I think it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about the things that you kind of once you pitch the idea, right? The things you're looking at metric-wise to sort of support your business case for more marketplace and more digital selling. You guys did a very good job sort of metricing that out along the way. So would love to just kind of get a peek into that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Don. Well, you and I have been doing this quite a while. We have a lot of, I'd call them field lessons learned, not a lot of prescriptive recipe books or playbooks out there to pave the path. But, initially 5 or so years ago, we wanted to build out our partnership with AWS. And one of the first things that came to mind was, let's try this AWS marketplace thing that looks like a good opportunity to reach out to some new personas, capture some new budget, and potentially launch new products. So was a really simple marketplace integration, simple listing, very early on, and we were building out a basic partnership with the cloud service provider as well. And it was pretty simple, right? It was a partnership plus a marketplace listing, and we kind of waited. We were like, well, we built it and waiting for them to come, right? It was it was an opportunity to analyze and inspect like what benefit, other than the initial, where are all the buyers that are perusing the marketplace for security products, like why aren't they showing up to buy our stuff? We realized that there was maybe alternative metrics we could use to really justify investing in this, because we did have executive buy-in that this is an important partnership, an important mechanism, path to revenue. So we really started looking at how could this path to budget open up an opportunity for acceleration, right? So could we get our deals in faster? Could we do them more seamlessly? Could we, attract a different type of buying persona? And so, we really started on that path of speed, right? Being able to look at just marketplace and do speed. And, that ended up being a nice accelerator for the marketplace business. We also invested, realizing that there was a skills gap between what our kind of core sellers knew how to do and what the cloud service providers knew how to do. So we bridged that gap, accelerated the closing of that gap by investing in co-selling resources that, were field-based, understood what the levers and programs were, understood, most importantly, our better together story with the cloud service providers. That's a really important component as well. And once we had this, kind of field team that was activating, enabling both sides, right? They were activating the cloud co-sell from the cloud service provider, and they were also activating our core sellers. So we really dialed in the mechanism and really came up with speed. So I'd say that was kind of the initial barometer that we used to continue investing. And then we evolved the partnership to really be more about, we have this new product that we want to distribute. It's nicely integrated with the cloud service providers. So let's really capture the co-sell motion. And then we, again, iterated and said, well, we need like even more mature, more evolved field co-selling resources. So, we invested in people who were certified in cloud service providers programs. They knew what all the different cloud services were and were very fluent in the cloud service provider language. So with that, we were able to really connect to these new buying personas and these new opportunities and paths to budget. So I'd say it was an evolution over time. This was a 5-year journey, and we continue to evolve, really figuring out how do we integrate our channel partners into this motion? How do we integrate, kind of continually evolving our skills so that it really maps well to our overall partner GTM and aligns well just from a selling motion, basic selling motion perspective.
For sure. And I think, again, that's sort of the point of a conversation and the whole conference today is really talking about what are these elements of digital selling today and leveraging marketplaces, getting access to budgets that are available. All these things are kind of wrapped under this umbrella of cloud go-to-market and really a digital selling motion. You did something really smart when you first got started and were building the business case at CrowdStrike for selling via this new channel, which was at the time the AWS cloud marketplace. And I think for the audience here, super helpful for those who are just getting started building that business case. Oftentimes, as software companies, we want to wire around the North Star, which, as Mary knows from the scale to 100 million piece that Bessemer put out not too long ago, ARR is the North Star for software companies. So a lot of folks we find like to really wire on, hey, I'm going to go sell this idea to my revenue leaders or to my CEO, and cloud marketplaces are going to equal ARR. And that's the end goal, but you did something really smart and you looked at other indicators and other metrics that you could see the needle moving on. So if ARR wasn't, a massive hit straight out of the gates, what are the other things that you're looking at and measuring? And so maybe you could talk about that conversation with your finance partners. And then Mary, I'm going to come back to you and talk a little bit about how that relates to what you're seeing across your portfolio. But Jessica, I think just like, you mentioned speed. I think we also talked about sort of, the cost of sale, gross margin, things like that. So can you really just talk about some of those metrics you looked at to show success before you hit scale?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, again, it was about speed. And I would say also internally, it was about, being able to dial into a more automated mechanism that had, fewer humans at the helm, facilitating this type of transactions and these orders. So we did see a lot of optimization there. Again, it was an opportunity to accelerate not only our own sales cycle internally, but also, it was a new persona, right? A new buying persona and opening a path to market for new products. So, being able to immediately activate the trust that the cloud service providers had inherently with their customers, that was a great opportunity as well. You're kind of that extension of trust. Well, if I trust my cloud service provider, I'm trusting the ISV that they're partnered with. And then also internally metrics around, how well was our enablement program hitting, right? How well were we activating? So we would measure how many reps each quarter, each month were facilitating a transaction through a marketplace, right? And really tracking those types of internal metrics so that we could adapt and pivot our enablement programs, because the enablement programs are really important in these new routes to market.
For sure. I think one of the things that, and CrowdStrike has done a ton for, I think, everybody in the marketplace game as a company to look at and say, hey, how do you go do and run this well? I also owe a thank you. Your CEO, George Kurtz, had a quote not too long ago, I think 2020 earnings call. And he called out that your cycle time when you go via marketplace for deals is up to, reduced by 50% or reduced up to 50%, which was, a great statistic. We see a lot of companies with similar statistics, but it was awesome to have a leader CEO come out and say, hey, marketplace equals faster cycle time. And so, Mary, if you look across your portfolio companies and you're really more on the scale and growth side of things, right? But so for those companies that are growing and scaling, how valuable is that to take a look at, reducing that cycle time? It's not just ARR straight out of the gates, but like, what if I can get you, 10 deals 50% faster? Like, how important is that as you think across your portfolio companies?
Well, I'll certainly take it both as an investor and as a board member. This year, Bessemer put out its annual State of the Cloud report, maybe last week, pardon me. Yeah. And in it, we predicted that in 2 years, 80% of Cloud 100 companies, so these are the top private cloud companies in the world that Bessemer puts out alongside Forbes, will be marketplace sellers. And I think that a lot of the reason why are the dynamics that we're talking about here: faster sales cycles, faster implementation timelines, and obviously a lower friction to the purchasing process. I do invest later stage, but I do have some exposure to early stage companies. And I think as we think about what motions cloud companies are generally trying to build, it's some combination of a product-led growth motion and some direct selling. And in the earliest days of product market fit, it's probably not going to be the cloud marketplace strategy. You're thinking more about growth marketing tactics, conversion through the funnel, and the like. But as companies mature, I think that's the place where this digital selling motion and cloud marketplaces in particular become really effective. I invest in a lot of developer tools, Netlify, Teleport, LaunchDarkly. There's obviously a high degree of overlap between DevOps, security with the large cloud providers, and they have these contracts that allow you to add to the kind of committed spend agreements and obviously facilitate those sales cycles. We think a lot about PLG in terms of what is the quickest and lowest friction way to customer onboarding onto, a product. But just as important is to fulfillment and procurement. And I think that that's the place where obviously the cloud marketplaces really shines. And when it comes to kind of customer acquisition and the metrics that are associated, whether that's CAC payback or even net retention, obviously those are PLG motions. the other thing to note is, and tackle in particular, obviously with the ability to do usage-based pricing, that's core to PLG motions that we see, that is obviously incredibly additive for our portfolio companies that are trying to scale that motion. But I think the more painless the sales procurement cycles, obviously the quicker the customer acquisition and the better for the business overall.
Yeah, I think some really great points in there, especially like what we don't see a uniform entry point for a software company and marketplace. So it's not, hey, marketplace is not good for startups, or marketplace isn't good for, whatever it really depends on what you're doing, who you're selling to, and what motions you're trying to cater to. And a product-led motion, straight out of the gates with marketplace is probably getting easier and easier. I think it's where marketplace, like this is a promise of marketplace in the beginning, right? Was eyeballs on your product, and hey, go to AWS, and a bunch of people are going there, so hang your shingle out, and hopefully people will come and find and try and buy you, and you can grow that way. The marketplaces didn't really take off, that much. For some of the infrastructure players and the tools that are closer to developers, those motions, might have worked quite well. And you look at like the PagerDuties of the world and things like that. They have a great PLG motion, and we're able to leverage marketplace. But I think it's really, when you have a top-down and a bottoms-up approach, and accommodating, you can accommodate both. It's really just, looking at the strategies to do that. And so as a PLG company, ultimately at some point in time, there's hey, how do we now start to leverage the top-down motion? And marketplace works really, really well for that, for the reasons that you and Jessica have talked about, committed spend, and your buyers already have, agreements there. And so, doing a larger transaction via marketplace is valuable for that buyer. We're starting to see, more product-led motions and more startups leverage marketplace, but usually, not before you have a product market fit. I'd say it's kind of maybe the measuring stick, because if you're still kind of hunting and searching, like marketplace might not be that path for you, just yet. I think opening up new markets, right, and doing some new things with your products at marketplace also fits really nicely on. And Jessica, would you say CrowdStrike had a great cloud story when you started? How did the marketplace and AWS and the cloud provider kind of help you work on that game?
Yeah, I think, the better together story is really important in the overall cloud go-to-market. Kind of the first question I ask other ISV sales leaders when they're, hey, how'd you do it? Like, help us figure it out too. I usually say, well, what's in it for your customer? Like, does it make their journey to the cloud easier? Does it make it more secure? Does it make it more cost efficient, right? What are the benefits to buying your software and running it on top of the cloud service provider? So, really starting with that foundational piece of, wow, we have these new opportunities, these new personas to help our customers and the cloud service provider customers make their journey to the cloud more secure. And, really building that, again, I'm going to go back to enablement because it's really important. Enabling a group of sellers, cloud service providers, as well as your own specialist sellers to have that better together story and be fluent in the cloud service provider language. So.
Yeah, I think that's, really great point. The better together story is really important. I think, we oftentimes see maybe a little bit of the cart before the horse, right? Like trying to wire too tightly to any particular cloud provider straight out of the gates, before you get that better together story motion, might actually delay your path to ARR. So it's really kind of understanding where you're at. If you're a cloud native company already leveraging, AWS's native services in your product offering, like you already have a better together story for co-sell motion and things like that. But, somebody like CrowdStrike didn't necessarily have that, got into marketplace, started to drive deals because of the convenience to the buyer, and then started to leverage a better together story. So it's fascinating because I think there's just all kinds of different motions, and it's really, take a step back and consider what the journey and what the arc of the journey, looks like. And Mary, maybe like a little bit of a silly question for you because it's cloud all day long. But like, if you look across your portfolio companies, how important is that, that channel, that partnership, that better together with, the cloud hyperscalers to the growth story. And I think, really focusing on that, 100 million and more, how important is having a really relevant cloud story, and then, kind of working on that better together game.
Exceptionally important. I think that, as companies scale, it becomes a question of what are the different channels that are going to continue to bend their growth curves. And as you get bigger and bigger, those channels from a go-to-market perspective get thinner and thinner. Like you need to be more and more innovative over time. It's the same way that, on a product perspective is you need to find some different user segments and different products and stuff that you can expand your TAM with. The same thing is true of go-to-market channels. And I think that this one is particularly powerful because it opens up the aperture to, to the point you were making before, so many more eyeballs, a quicker procurement process, an enterprise segment that you might not have had before, while also keeping the bread and butter of what cloud companies are good at in this PLG motion, the bottoms up, the self-service. And when you pair those two together, you actually do get that tops down with bottoms up customer acquisition opportunity. Those are the channels that bend growth curves. And, to the CrowdStrike example that we're talking to, can generate hundreds of millions of dollars of incremental revenue. A channel that, for CrowdStrike generates another 10, that's not going to move the stock price. So I think that's really the power. And as we're talking about companies at 100 million of ARR, even $1 billion of ARR, I think that's the inherent power here.
Yeah, totally. And I think, a common pattern is, we see sort of companies wanting it all at once, like, hey, I want to flip on the switch and it's greatness overnight. And it's definitely a path to work on. But over time, as you work on this play, I think what we do see is the economics really working in favor of the software companies, right? Bringing that cost of sale down. The margin for this channel is so thin, allows you to make kind of other investments. And so we've seen a lot of success and just kind of getting this ground game right, getting this off the ground, starting to scale it, and then more and more opportunity. And ultimately, when you get to that scale point and you're able to co-sell with the cloud providers, then you can really start to take advantage of some of the economies of scale of partnering and pairing with these cloud sales teams. I'm going to have Jessica talk a little bit more about where they're at on their journey right now, because there is a scale out motion, whether it's operationally, whether it's sales teams. There is a scale out motion that you will go through if you are successful scaling this, this revenue channel. And the margin that you pay the cloud providers is a lot more advantageous than traditional channels to market, multi-tier distribution, things like that, and allow you some leverage to, I think, kind of play around. So I think, Jessica, really, if you could talk us through, how this evolved at CrowdStrike. You touched on it a little bit, but I think let's double click on what the organization looked like. Starting days, it was, you, Todd, and a bucket of hope. And how did you grow from there? And what does the organization had to grow to accommodate?
Yeah, again, it goes back to enablement. I mean, we really, Todd and I focused on building the mechanism, and I kind of came up with this strategy, and then we focused on building a mechanism to execute the strategy. It was a lot of fast iteration and failing fast, pivoting, being agile, right? All those things that are a lot of fun to really get the mechanisms right. And then once we would manually figure out what the process was, then we would apply energy on how do we automate that process. And then we move on to the next friction point. So, a lot of the changes we made and adaptations we made were based on those learnings, right? So it was really initially about getting more feet on the street out there to advocate for why to use why to use a cloud marketplace. And then this next phase was, well, what's in it for the customer other than they get to use their cloud commit, right? Well, maybe it's a better together story around the learnings from, if they're using CrowdStrike and the cloud services together, it's more secure. And then it just continued to evolve to a point where now we've, again, automated a lot of the internal mechanisms, put a lot of investment in around operations and efficiencies on the mechanism in the process. And then again, continue to invest in more mature co-selling teams that understand not only how to use Marketplace, they also understand how to co-sell with the cloud service providers. And now they understand also how to transact with, a channel partner. So, with each turn we iterate, and I think that helps grow and evolve the go-to-market to adapt to our customers, the market segments, as well as, what products we have available to sell.
Awesome. Well, I think the growth has been really undeniable. Tackle has, we've grown from, a handful of customers to over 400 in the past couple of years alone, because Marketplace is a thing and digital selling is, a thing. And turns out, if I could click a button and buy $10 million of software, that's pretty cool. There's machinery behind the scenes to make that work and happen. And, where we've enjoyed a great partnership with CrowdStrike and the rest of our customers and partners is really, helping to smooth that and make this something that's digestible so you can scale it out. I think talking and thinking about the future a little bit here, I'm going to ask two questions, one to Mary, one to Jess, and then if we've got time for any questions, we will. But Mary, as you look at the companies across your portfolio that are doing really well today, have scaled to 100, or ones that you think are on the path, for those who are looking to get there, what are those motions that the most successful scalers are doing kind of earlier on to set them up for success? And it doesn't have to be cloud marketplace. It's fine. Like your visibility across all the portfolio companies you have is super valuable, I think, to the audience here. So just kind of what are those key markers that you see of companies that are prepared to scale and are going to go on and scale successfully?
Well, I'll certainly put it into the digital selling category. And as I think about digital selling, it's PLG, marketplace fulfillment, but it's also things that help companies to transact digitally and easier than they did before. I think long gone are the days of the sit down steak dinners, the very, very heavy field sales and enterprise sales motions. And I think it's things like leveraging tech for lead gen, demo side, fulfillment of the contracts. And the key metrics that I'm looking at to evaluate the effectiveness of these things are sales efficiency, CAC payback, expansion revenue, and basically tooling to help you acquire cheaper leads, sign customers, expand existing customers, but do so via digital channels. Obviously, cloud marketplaces being an incredibly powerful one. But, on the whole, I think the pillars that we're talking about are access to larger budgets, faster sales cycles, and when you roll those through a cloud company's P&L, you see the impacts incredibly greatly. And as an investor and with my private and public cloud software lens on, sales and marketing expense represents over 50% of cloud companies' revenues every year, even at maturity. Public cloud companies are still spending a gargantuan amount of money on their sales and marketing. And if you can use those dollars more efficiently and help to drive ARR growth, that incremental ARR becomes cheaper and cheaper to acquire. Your business is more efficient. You can generate cash faster, and you have a better, more sustainable business that obviously benefits from virtuous cycles, a virtuous cycle of customer acquisition, revenue generation, which obviously reinforces over time lead, talent, product iteration as well. So, it's obviously a multi-tiered pathway, but I see my companies trying to adopt a lot of these digital selling motions because of the longer term consequences, which obviously have larger business benefits beyond just revenue acquisition, but incredibly powerful.
Yeah, excellent. Jessica, I think my question for you, and all apologies to the folks at CrowdStrike, but I think Jessica is going to be one of the next great revenue leaders. Whether you choose to go on and be a CRO, CEO, wherever you're going, you've got really some great experience. So I wanted to give you the hypothetical of, hey, let's say the next thing is in front of you. You're a CRO of the next software company. Like, how do you think about approaching, building out a digital selling motion and using what you've learned? What do you think that might look like? Understanding there's a wealth of different companies you might you could theoretically be at the helm of, but would really love to hear kind of what your lens is on that and how what you've done at CrowdStrike might have shaped that.
Sure. Well, I think it's really about the software company itself, right? It's about the ISV. And a lot of the ISVs that I talk to who are very early on in their journey, it's about where they're built and it's about what their software does, and really creating alignment between the cloud service providers and the ISV. So being intentional and mindful when you say, well, you know, how would we co-sell 5 years from now, right? Where are we built? How does our platform consume cloud services? Is it from 3 different ones? Is it from one, right? And if I could kind of rewind time and go back and know what I know now, it would be all about, you know, really looking at the engineering roadmap and saying, oh, okay, I think we're going to design this, this, and this. And, you know, here's where it would tie into the cloud service provider fabric. Here's where it would tie into their buying personas, and really build, you know, integrate, I should say, this cloud go-to-market into where the ISV is really focused on being 5 years from now, instead of really looking at it. I mean, obviously you need to look at it from the bottoms up approach, which is that iterative monthly, quarterly cycle of being agile, but also with the horizon of 5 years from now, right? Is where's the ISV going to be 5 years from now, and how can a integration or partnership with a cloud service provider impact that? So I guess that's what the future would hold, is, you know, being able to, like I said, rewind a little bit and take those lessons learned and really build it in from the ground floor as the ISV grows as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, one thing I would add to that, I love and something that I think you all did really well, and the best sellers in across the marketplaces have done really well, is to sort of call the ball, predict the future for your product and engineering team, right? Hey, we might not start out with some deep integration story, but I'm gonna bring some revenue to the plate. And once that revenue gets to significant, like we need to have a growth story, and we're gonna want to have more. And so I'm going to show you the metrics that show you that more is worth investment, and setting the stage for, you know, future product growth and alignment with cloud providers is something that you can do early, and you don't have to try to bite off on all at once before you have that evidence and those indicators. So I think that's really important. I think the second thing also is just, where are my buyers spending money, right? No matter where any of us land or what you end up doing, if you're selling software, you know, where are the dollars going? And, you know, by and large, dollars are flowing to the cloud providers. And so figuring out how to park yourself close to where those dollars are is really the name of the game, right? And how do I go get those dollars and make myself a relevant part of that story so I can attach naturally? So, I mean, great thoughts from both of you. I'm honored to be able to get to spend time learning from you both. And so really appreciate it. I know we've got a couple minutes here, so I wanted to see if there are any questions that we wanted to field from the audience. I don't know if we have a moderator who's doing that or not. So. Appears like we don't. So I don't. Let's see.
We answered all the questions that everyone had. So
okay, cool. No, I've got I had a little chat window pop up and said I can take some questions now, and I'm like, all right, where are the questions on my screen here? Can't find them. No, if we don't have any questions from the audience, I think it's been, you know, a great conversation with you all. Really enjoyed it, and I'm sure super valuable to all the folks who dialed in. So really appreciate the time today from Mary and Jessica. And hang on, we have time for one question. So what tips do we have for a distributor of security products in the cloud marketplaces? Where to add value? So I'd say that's probably squarely focused on Jessica.
So tips, I see. Well, you know, I'd kind of go back to the recipe or the cookbook. I think we've evolved far enough along the journey to sort of have a playbook or a cookbook. And, you know, I'd say, again, service integrations that resonate with your cloud buyer, right? The new persona that you're reaching out to, those are really important. And then the specialized co-selling team, really making sure that you have expertise that know how to create the connective tissue in region. And then, systems. It's really important to have those systems and mechanisms that integrate with the cloud service providers like Marketplace, like their CRM tools, like their reporting mechanisms, so that you can track activation and be able to respond and be agile to adapt the program to those leading indicators.
Awesome. And I just realized I didn't have my chat window open, so there are plenty of questions. I'm just not looking in the right place, so that's my fault. There were a couple questions here. If I had to kind of like sum them all together, is sort of what do you do to stand out in a noisy crowd? Is a question. One thing that I would maybe offer too is arming your sales team. Jessica talked about enablement, quite a bit, and thinking about the cloud marketplaces first as a path to getting deals done. And in the hands of a sales team, as a seller, I want the most number of ways to win as possible. I can go direct, I can go through a VAR, I can go market. Like, I want every single play, but I need to know about those plays. And so I think, first and foremost, arming your sales team to understand, like, hey, we're going to take this into our own hands first. And it is just like any partnership. Once you start showing growth and demand and interest, then the lean in starts to come from the cloud provider. So my first sort of crack at an answer there is, first, take that into your own hands, right? Don't look to the cloud providers to market your product, sell your product, talk to the world about how great your product is, until you've started to lean into that motion yourself, and plan to do that, right? Set the stage to do that, and have the enablement in place for the sales team so that they know, hey, here are the questions I'm going to ask when I'm in a selling cycle, and what to ask early and upfront. And nobody needs to be an expert, right? Who are your cloud partners? Where are you guys spending a lot of your dollars? Like, these are easy questions that a salesperson can ask. The answers will give signal as to, oh, hey, it might be easier for us to drop this first purchase onto your cloud bill. The deal might be able to move faster, or we can tap into some budget there. So things like that. Jessica, what would you add to the picture in terms of standing out in a noisy crowd?
I'd also add the mechanisms, right? Making sure that the integrations with the cloud service providers, that you're investing there, and not just kind of throwing up a integration and hoping that it will work. It's really about having, again, specialized operational resources that understand how to integrate with the CRM, what reporting metrics are important, so that you're really connected. And I kind of go back to that idea of connective tissue. It's field resources that understand how to sell this way, how to co-sell. And then there's a connective tissue that's more operational and mechanism oriented, to make sure that you're able to extract the data to say, oh, wow, when we did this joint co-selling initiative with this cloud service provider, the messaging really resonated. Like, let's do more of that kind of propensity to sell, propensity to buy type of data reading. And I think those are really important, maybe, uniquely to cloud service providers, because there is such a volume of personas out there. It's like, well, we don't have to attach to 100% of the personas or even 10% of your personas. If we attach to 2% of your personas, right, we could really see an uplift. And I think that's the art and science of a cloud go-to-market, is really calibrating the mechanisms to tell you what decision to make next. Because it's really, again, about speed and making sure we're making the right decisions quickly.
Yep. I'm gonna one more question really fast. We'll try to disco speed round it here. But a question that came up, which I think is a really great one, is hey, I don't see my deals going faster. When there are larger deals, what if I have a complex business use case, if I have a complicated product, how does a marketplace speed that up, right? I think, again, my visibility into how customers and sellers are doing really well to speed up cycles is identifying customers, your buyers who have those cloud relationships, and think about speeding up the procurement process once the decision has been made. Is it going to make a complex decision go faster? No. Like, you still got to sell your product. A cloud marketplace isn't going to be snap your fingers and boom, you're ready to go. What we see is frankly, when you have a buyer who's decided that they want to buy through a cloud marketplace, we're seeing buyers like the Home Depots of the world and large companies who spend a lot of dollars with the cloud marketplaces. Their preferred route to procure is through the cloud marketplaces. So knowing that and kind of taking that in the early part of a sales cycle into the equation can help speed up the latter part of the sales cycle and get a deal done faster. We see really commonly, hey, software companies come to Tackle all the time with hey, my buyer said I could buy you today, or I can buy your software like within the next month if we can buy it through a cloud marketplace. If I can't, we're going to have to go through a long and protracted, vendor management, onboarding, all this kind of stuff. So that's what we see. I don't, Jessica, anything to add to that in the closing seconds here?
Yeah, I think, marketplace is one of the mechanisms where Tackle really excels is, you guys are the connective tissue of those mechanisms. So it's really important to have the mechanism optimized for that transaction speed. It's just, it's one pillar, right? It's one pillar of the overall cloud go-to-market, which is resonating with the cloud buyer, having a co-sell team that can make that sales engagement happen, and then obviously like the mechanisms and distributions of the marketplace service or Tackle platform for consolidating all of that across multiple cloud providers. So I'd say it's definitely about acceleration, but it's one aspect of the overall go-to-market.
For sure. Well, thank you both very much. I went from no questions to a bunch of questions, so we'll answer the questions that didn't get touched on. We took it a little overtime here. I'm sure I'm in trouble with somebody for that. So to Mary, to Jessica, thank you very much. Appreciate it. To the audience, thank you as well. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.